Hello.
Greetings.
So I don't particularly have an agenda here. So if anyone has anything they want me to talk about or has any questions, just go in.
I had a question.
Yeah.
I'm working on, let's see, 43 is the final. I'm still working on the very end of number 41. Exercise 5. We're supposed to pull stuff from the array, then we're supposed to manipulate it by adding it together. My son showed me a shortcut way, but that's cheating. So I'm kind of stuck on that, and I've been, doing all the looking to see how to do it. And I know once I get a hint, it'll be like, oh yeah, of course. But my brain is going, huh?
Okay. So I guess how far did you get? What have you been able to do?
The first couple parts of exercise 5.
Okay. So have you been able to get the list of number? I think that's the one where you get the list of numbers and add them together.
Yeah, and I can, the promise and all that. So I do get that. I need to pull up the text that has the code I've been working on here. Let's see.
Okay. So you
No, that's not the right one. Anyway, let me find that here. Module 5.
so you've done the native server, you just need to add up all the numbers together is where you're having difficulty.
Yeah, let's see how far I got. I got 5, exercise 5. Okay, I got your Axios get and the module 5 sets a number list. Okay, no problem. Then let promise equal Axios get and the URL, no problem. Promise dot then function data console log data. And then let data equal JSON parse and then parentheses JSON string console log data.
I mean, you're typically when one speaks code, it's kind of hard to follow along with it. So if you
I'm
could
sorry.
paste it maybe in the student pasted code channel or something, from rough that it sounds like you're headed down the right path. One thing I will mention is keep in mind that that callback function is going to fire once the request completes. So if you want to run any code that happens when the request completes, you need to put it inside of that function. So if you just run like promise.then console.log and then hit enter and then try to like do stuff with the response, that's not going to work. You have to do it inside of that function.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm sort of getting fuzzy, and I didn't see anything in the slides, and I have to watch the video. But so like promise.then function, and then instead of data, you'd put your stuff, or there'd be another thing inside of data.
You put another thing inside of the function.
Instead of data.
Let me send you a little snippet.
I mean, I'm not trying to cheat and have you give me the answer. I just
No, I think that
kind of stuck.
I think if you see this thing, it'll make more sense.
Okay. Are you doing it in the chat?
Yep. Actually, I could just share my screen. Let me do that.
All right, that works.
And Brandy, I see you got your hand raised. I'm going to get to you right afterwards. Okay.
And I know it when you show it, I'll be like, oh yeah, we did cover that, but it's like so much stuff went by that I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, wait, I need to do this in VS Code. You guys aren't going to like my tools.
Yeah, and my son was saying, well,
Ryan.
you should be doing this like in the script thing. And I said, yeah, well, we're supposed to do it in the browser tool. He's like, oh, okay.
I do it in either.
Yeah, he knows more than me, so he's this is the kind of stuff that once you sort of get it, it's like, it's not so hard. But there's like this leap from like there's this little bridge that is out until you get it.
It takes a bunch of practice, a bunch of repetition.
Oh yeah. And it's fun, but it's like, oh, what am I doing wrong?
So this is what you had been writing.
Yes.
The thing that you got to realize is if you want to do something with like response, maybe you want to go like response.data, like get the data inside of the response. You've got to do that here. You can't do that down here.
In a separate.
You have to do it up here because remember, this callback is going to fire when the request completes. That promise is going to resolve. And the response is the data that's inside of that promise. So when that promise resolves, this function is going to be called. It's going to be called with response, and you're only going to have access to response within this function. So you're not going to have access below.
So doing a separate thing in another function is a waste of time.
Yeah, you're not going to have the data.
So you want to see the response, but you want the response to pull from the data.
Yeah, I mean, maybe now you could do something like, I don't
And
know.
the data has the array.
Yeah, you could like get the first item of the array if you wanted to, and like
that. Yeah, that's looking familiar.
Something like this. And the actual part about adding all the numbers together, I would say if you're having trouble with that, review loops in module 4. In particular, probably the easiest way to do this is with a for loop.
Yeah, Matthew was saying that's what you should do. He did this all fancy thing. He said, but don't hand it in because I don't know you cheated. He said, yeah, you want to do a for loop there. I'm like, that's what I thought.
Well,
okay.
I'm
so you're telling it that the first item you want to get is the first one in that index, which is the array.
Yeah, I mean, in this example code, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, response.data is equal to the response that comes back from the server.
But you want to get all the numbers.
You do, yeah. So I'm purposefully not telling you how to add all the numbers together because I want you to work through it and figure it out. But what I'm trying to express is that if you want to work with the data, you have to be in this function.
Yes.
And response.data is an array of all the numbers. So if you can figure out the problem of I've got an array of numbers, how do I add them all together and make a total? If you can figure that out and then do that on response.data, you've got your answer.
All right. So within that function.
Within this function, yes.
So it can all be done one shot instead of a whole bunch of other, yeah, that's what I was going to do. So response.data with 0 isn't saying, it's not saying just give me the first item. It's saying let the first item be the first one in that index, because I might want the first one to be the 5th place.
Response.data 0 is giving you the first item in that array, the item with index 0. So if you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's
it'll pull 1.
This is going to evaluate to 1.
Yes. So I have to figure out how to get all of them. I think it's starting to come back in my notes and everything, and then how to manipulate and add them.
Yeah. So
but all in the same function.
Allow you to run code over and over they allow you to run code repeatedly, and you can change values in each time you run it. So you like with a for loop, you can change a value to go through all the items in the array. And I'm not going to go any further than that. But like this is also like if you look up online, JavaScript add all numbers in an array. Like get a Stack Overflow post that has about 20 ways to do this.
Yeah, I've been doing that due diligence on the research.
So I'm going to say I think you have enough now where you've got to, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you've got enough where you've got some things you can try and move forward. Would you say that?
I think that gives me, I'm just trying to screen capture this. Here we go. Yeah. And so that other thing where it was all my bad, that exercise, I will get back to that and I will fix those, but I want to keep moving forward with the rest of these first. So
cool.
Yeah, let me just save this to desktop and I'm good. Okay, that'll just give me a framework. Thank you.
Yep.
Very much. It's very helpful.
Brandy.
I have 2. Well, the first one isn't a question. I noticed something with what Carolyn was doing. She mentioned finding something. I don't know if it's all right to speak on this. Stop me if like I'm giving too much away, but Axios provides the answer, I noticed. like once you spit out the array information, it's the answer that we're supposed to find is right next to the word array. That's what I found, but I still did the extra work, but yeah.
So that's the number of items in the array. At least
Oh, okay.
exercise 5, I'm talking about the sum. Like if you take all those numbers and you add them together.
Oh, got it. Yeah, that was the second part that I found. The question that I had isn't related to this anymore. It's the weekend project.
Mhm.
Are we linking Axios in our project or no?
You need to use Axios in your project. Are you asking if you need to put like a script tag in your HTML page to use it?
Yes.
Yes, you do. I believe I included the script tag you have to add in the exercise file. If not, though, I can send it to you in Slack.
Nope, I got it. I just wanted to double check.
Cool.
Just one other thing on that question I had too. There's it's called the number list. So I tried pulling that too. Am I closer or stop?
The number list endpoint, I think, is the one you want.
Good.
Like, yeah.
I'm
yeah,
on
I
the
mean,
right track.
it
All
sounded
right.
like from what you said earlier, you've got the request part of the exercise like good and working.
Yeah,
Like,
and I'm packing
you're-
the promise. I'm getting good at that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the thing you still have to figure out is the adding all the numbers together. But the rest of it seems like you've got that
And
down.
pulling the ones away. Fantastic. All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
I think Susan has questions.
Oh, sorry, need to be looking in the chat here. Oh, Susan, do you have a question?
I mean, I have multiple questions, so well, now I have to go over. Well, I actually I have 3, but just to go on the weekend assignment, I got the API so I can see the info, but I'm wondering if I'm supposed to just Google how to put the API to make it visible, because when I look at my HTML, I can see it on the side, but the only thing I can find when I Google is fetch, and I don't know how to turn that
Yeah.
into Axios. Like there's no description for Axios.
Yeah, so just for some context, Fetch is a library we used last cohort, and it's probably, if I had my druthers, we would have used this cohort, but Joey wanted to use Axios, and I wanted to teach what he'd be using in the next module. So probably you've gotten the data, you've requested the data, and you've like logged it out to the JavaScript console. That's as far as you've gotten.
Yeah, and I looked at your and Kelly's code, but I can't parse that in a way that makes me understand to be able to switch it
Yeah.
for how we're supposed to do it.
So the thing it sounds like you're getting hung up on is how do you take the data from JavaScript and put it into the HTML page?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Like to visit, like, yeah. So someone that
Yeah.
loads the page can see it as opposed to it being just behind the scenes.
Yeah. So I think in module 4, Max briefly touched on this, but he didn't really do it enough justice. Does something like get element by ID, does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
So one thing you could do, just like as a starting point, is you could make a div on your page and give it some sort of ID.
Okay.
And then in your JavaScript, you could do something like document.getElementById, that ID, .inner HTML equals, and then all your JSON.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that. I don't know how to do it to make it like the JSON part. I don't understand either because, yeah, I think I'm missing a detail or
Okay.
something I'm supposed to understand that I don't.
Let me do this. I'm going to, I don't think you folks went into like this stuff as deep as you probably should have. So maybe, given that it's something that would make your project, your weekend project a lot better, maybe I'll spend some time and talk about this. So I'm just going to put together a quick page here. And there's probably a faster way to do this in VS Code, but I don't really know what I'm doing in VS Code.
There is. There's a faster way to do this.
Exclamation point tab.
Yep.
Okay.
Try it. It's so much faster.
You'll have everything you need.
I'm just going to call this test.html. Okay. Okay. Cool. So I just wanted something where I can do some stuff and make some things happen here. So one thing you can do, kind of what I had just said, is let's say you have like some data. Data here. And then you do in your body, do something like you make a div with an ID of test. And this is what you talked about in module 4. So this should be somewhat familiar, I would think. Something you could do is something like document.getElementById test.inner HTML is equal to data. Something kind of like that. So what this is doing is this document.getElementById function. It gets a reference to this tag in JavaScript. And then on that reference, you're setting inner HTML equal to data, which is this. So what that's doing behind the scenes is basically modifying the web page to include this data inside of this tag. So it's as if the tag was like this. If I save that, I go over here, you can see I see data here showing up. And if I go over here, you can see the data's in there. So that's one thing you could do. Like if you had instead something like more accurately, like some sort of data, and you could do something like JSON.stringify data. That's going to put the JSON data in the web page. And what's going on here is this data, this is an object, and this is the kind of data you'd get coming back from the request once Axios has deserialized it. And then you can take that data and you can convert it back into a string, and you can put it in the web page with a similar sort of thing. This is one option. Of course, this is not going to render anything pretty, and I'll get to that in a second. But like, if you just want like the minimum viable, I want to put the data in the web page, this is definitely a way to do it. Susan, does this make sense?
I mean, a little bit. I really had a trouble with, I mean, this makes sense when you show it, but I can't think this on my own, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't do well with this.
Okay.
But like when you illustrate it this way, yes, but I would never have come up with this myself. Even looking at your stuff, which I kind of feel like this is what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is just something that comes with a lot of practice. Like these browser APIs are a little bit like confusing sometimes. I will say though, in the next module in React, you're going to be learning a way to do this. It's a little bit more straightforward and less complicated. So I would say if for now, this is as far as you want to get, and you just want to like put the data in the page just to prove that you can do it, like that's totally fine. And if you go to, I think there was a one of the module 4 exercises, I think I saw when I was looking through that code. Yeah, I think this one. No, it wasn't that one. Okay, maybe I'll see if I can dig it up afterwards. But I seem to remember one of the module 4 exercises being like very close to this. So there is some code you can copy from, but I'll put this in the student pasted code channel at least. So people have that as a reference. However, I imagine some people at least will see this we'll see this and think like, okay, that's great and all, but like Ryan and Kelly's examples looked so nice, and I want mine to look nice too. If you do, there are actually making that making the text, sorry, making the HTML that JavaScript will generate easier or more, making it look better is not all that much harder. It just requires a couple additional functions you need to know about. I'm going to quickly cover it now because I don't think it's been covered so far in the program, and I know some students are going to want it, and even if they're not on and they want to watch it, just because I would love to be able to see some of these projects where like they actually kind of look pretty good. So you talked about get element by ID, and I'm going to just assign this to a variable, but doing the exact same thing. You talked about get element by ID. And what this does, this returns a thing called a DOM node. Have you heard the word DOM at all in this class yet? Or document object model? Okay, I'm seeing a mix of shaking heads and nodding heads. So I'm just going to assume the answer is no. The document object model is what the browser, it's sort of the browser's representation of the HTML page. So the document object model is like all the tags laid out, and things like all the attributes in the tags and all the contents within each tag. It's sort of the tree of all that data that you can see in the web browser. So the elements page here, this is like a representation of the document object model. This is sort of like an interactive browser you can use to take a look through it. So when you hear that word, you can just think of it as like the HTML of the page. So what people will use this word DOM node or document object model node. And what that means is just one of the tags in the page. So for example, this here, this DOM node, this is equal to this, like the JavaScript representation of this tag. So to give you an idea of like what I mean by JavaScript representation of that tag, let me run this interactively. And you can see it actually kind of prints out like this little like HTML representation. That's kind of just what Google Chrome does. But like if I were to log this out, you can see kind of what it, oh, no, okay, it's not, it's going to still log out as a tag. But this itself is one of these DOM nodes. And if I put inside of here, put that in a variable, oh, already declared node, let me do something else like n. I do n dot, you can see there's all these different properties that are accessible on this. And this allows you to kind of like do things with this node in JavaScript. So for example, like one thing you might want to do is like, let's say you have a text box. So I'm going to quickly here add an input box, input type text, for example, ID of input. So we've got a text box here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to document the get element by ID input. So now I've got my input in n. And one thing you might want to do is like focus an input. That's like a common thing you might want to do. Like the user clicks it and it becomes focused. There's a way you can do that. There's a focus method on here. And if I call that, well, if I put this in set timeout to call it because I need to not have the console selected. So there we go. See, like I had to put it in set timeout to wait a second for it to do it, but it ran n.focus and this input focused on its own. I didn't have to click that input at all. So the point here being, all these sorts of attributes here on the node are like either ways you can, there are ways you can interact with the actual element on the page. And the one you learned about was inner HTML. And if you select, if I select something again that actually has some contents, like inner HTML gives you the contents of one of the DOM nodes, or you can set it and it'll set the contents of it. So the point being, there's a bunch of functions you can call. There's a bunch of values you can set, and that's great and all. But like, this only works for DOM nodes that already exist in the page. What if you want to make your own DOM node? Like you want to make a new one? That's kind of like the next sort of step often people will take. Like maybe you want to generate like a div with some tags inside of it, and you want to render that whole that whole section of markup to the screen. The way you do that is a function called document.createElement. And you can give this a name of a tag, something like div. Copy this out here. So I can do something like, that's a div. Now, I can set div.innerHTML. Yeah, something like that. But watch what happens when I load the page. I don't see this div with the data contents showing up on the page. And if you look, like it's not in the DOM, and my code is there, it looks like it's working, but what's going on? Well, the answer is when you create a new DOM node, you're actually creating it in memory. You're sort of like creating it in like a staging area. And then in order to actually take that DOM node and to put it into the page, you have to do what's called append it. So there's one more line you need in order to get this to show up on the screen. And that's you need to do something like take that DOM node and add it into the body. So you've created the DOM node, but you've got to actually add it now. And the way that you would do that is something like document.body. And for reference, document.body, this is just a reference to the body node. So you can get this any sort of way you want. This is just an easy way to do it. There's also like document.head and things like that. There's some shortcuts there for like elements where there's only one of them on the page. So you can do document.body, and document.body is another one of these DOM nodes. So it's just like this or this or anything like that. And another one of those methods on the DOM node is Append Child. What this does is it takes the node you give it and it puts it inside of itself. So if I do something like document.body.append child div, what that's going to do is it's going to append this div at the very end of the body. So it's inside of the body, but at the very end. And now we see it show up on the screen. So keep in mind, this div, I never wrote this in HTML anywhere. Like this was all created in JavaScript. Now, you might be able to kind of see where I'd be going next here, but if I want to put something like an h1 tag inside of this div, how would I do that? Well, the answer is, what I need to do is I need to make a copy of this. So I could do something like h1 and make an h1. And to be clear, this doesn't have to match. I'm just making it match because it's kind of convenient, but it's a variable. It can be whatever you want. So I'll do something like h1 contents. Now, you first might just think, okay, that's all I need to do. And you'd be right that it'll show up, but notice it's showing up in the root. It's not showing up inside of the div. And you need it to show up inside of the div, right? I mean, I guess you don't need to, but in general, like being able to nest HTML is often very important. You can't just have everything at the root just in one sort of flat list. So in order to make that happen, the way you would do that is you can change where you're appending the child. So I can instead put div here. And when I do that, notice right now we've got two things that are flat. So div and h1, they're at the same level. But watch what happens when I reload the page. Now we've got div, and then the contents inside of the div, and then the h1. So it's put the h1 inside of the div, not at the same level as the div. So using this sort of technique, you can build markup as complex, like as nested as you want in any sort of complex situation. If you want to put something inside of the h1, you can do the same sort of thing. You could make a new thing, and then just instead of appending it to the div, you could append it to the h1. Or like, let's say you want to put another thing inside of the div. You wanted to have two items. Maybe you wanted like a description. You could put a p tag here, maybe. And I'll go description. And keep in mind, I'm still appending the div. So it's going to be the same level as that h1 inside of the div. So when I refresh it, you'll see I've now got it inside of the div. This p is not inside of the h1. It's at the same level inside of the h1 in the div. So there's one last thing I'm going to mention, which is if you wanted to add a class or add an ID to any of these so you can style them, the easiest way to do that is there's an attribute on DOM nodes called class name. And you can set this equal to whatever you'd set the class attribute to in HTML. So maybe like my class. You can see now it shows up there. Note that it is not class, it is class name. And that is that confuses a lot of people. It's like a weird exception. And you're actually going to run into this again in React next week, probably. So worth pointing out. But basically, if you want to make something as nice looking as what Kelly or I had, like this is basically what you need to know to do it. So I will take this and I'll put this in the student basic code channel. And
But I still don't understand how that's showing the data. Is it from the part that you have X'd out right here, the const data, blah, blah, this part?
yeah, so let's say you had some data up here. Like maybe you had like let's just say like an array of numbers. And you want to show like a div for each of these numbers. One way you could do that, you could go for item of data, you could loop over data, and then for every item in data, you could make a div. So you could do something like make a div, set the inner HTML equal to item, get rid of the class, all this rest of the stuff, and do something kind of like this. What this is going to do is going to render a div for each of these items. So effectively, like, there's the easiest way to do this is just to take the raw data and put it into the page. But the more complex way to do it, and the way that's going to give you a nicer looking result, is if you realize the data is actually like a JavaScript. It's JavaScript, like a JavaScript data type. So you can do things like loop over it. You can do things like get a key. You can do any sort of typical operation you do to a JavaScript data type. Like in this case, we've got an array. So I can loop over that array and I can do something for every item in that array, like make a div. So like extrapolating the New York Times assignment, there's a list of books in that response. You could loop over all those books and you could like make a div for each one and then like put data specific to that book in that div and then append it. And that's how you're able to like get markup now you can style with CSS. Is that helpful?
No, I still don't understand
okay.
how the API info is showing. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? Or no?
So you're asking like the data you get back from Axios, how do you
Yes.
get, okay. Let me extend this a
I
bit.
feel like that's the first step, no?
Yeah, that is the first step. I guess I didn't realize that was what you were confused about. So
That's the main thing I don't understand.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me do this with the numbers list endpoint because it gives you data that looks just like this, so we can
Okay.
it'll match well. So I do like module5.ml number, I think it was numbers list like that. So I've got my my promise. Go promise dot then. Response. Okay. So this part makes sense to you. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. I have this and it only shows in the console.
Yes.
That's where I'm at.
This is where I'm going to start. So,
Okay.
Wait a second. What did I screw up here? Did I have the wrong endpoint? Is it number list? Number list, not numbers list. That would help if I got the right thing.
It's singular, not plural.
What do I still have wrong here?
You're missing the 5. It's module 5.ml.
Oh, yes, thank you. There we go. Okay. So we've got our response being printed out there. And I could do something maybe like response.data. And now I've got the data inside of it. So You're good with this. Cool. Okay. So response.data is equal to some data we got back from the server. So I might do something like const data the response.data. And then I might do something like we've got our comment this out here. We've got our div ID of test. So like maybe a good first step could be something like document dot get element by ID test dot inner HTML. So getting the data back from the server, reconverting it back into JSON, and then just putting it inside of this div here. So if I do something like that, I'm going to get this. So now I've got this div where I've just got the literal JSON of the response in that div. And the really important thing to mention here is this line has to be inside of this function. This line cannot be down here. And the reason why that is because data or response or the stuff you get back from the request is only available inside of this function. This variable is being defined here. And assuming I didn't make a separate variable for that and I had just response.data there, like response, it's not defined in the context in the function above that function. So you have to put any of this logic inside of that callback function. Does this make sense to you? Cool.
Yes, but I'm going to tell you, I would never have known to do all that. Personally, other people in the class might know, but I would never have figured this out on my own.
Okay. I think that I think probably it's just because these DOM APIs were not covered as much as I thought they were. I get the feeling like Max covered them at the very end, like in one day, and I thought he was gonna. Thought he was gonna cover them more than he did. But at least we're getting into it a little bit now. So then also kind of extrapolating what I had here back up. Like let's say you wanted to make a DOM node for each one. I could instead of having that line, I could do something like this. And now I get a div for each thing. Sorry, a big flurry has happened in the chat since I last looked. I'm just trying to catch up here. Kelly, is there anything I should be answering?
I think I caught up with Carolyn's questions. I'm not exactly sure, but I think I got there.
Okay.
Actually, Ryan, I do have a question. There was a different question about how to use Bootstrap with this project.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Do you want to maybe go over how to integrate that?
Yeah. So let's say I'm gonna keep going with this numbers list version kind of the New York Times project because it doesn't give everything away and it kind of proves a lot of the same it does a lot of the same things. So I'm gonna go to get bootstrap. I think it's getbootstrap.com. Yeah. Click get started. So I'm pretty sure Max went over this, but in general, when you're using Bootstrap, you need to include the styles, and you've got to include the JavaScript. I'm going to include the bundle version. Now, as far as the order of these script tags, doesn't really matter if Bootstrap goes before Axios, because the only thing that's really important is Axios, this script tag has to go before the script you're writing. Because the script you're writing is using Axios, which is defined by this script tag. So you could put this script tag here, like the line, you could flip these two, the order of these two if you really wanted to. But what we have here is fine. Let's get rid of this input because we no longer need it. Okay, so now if I go back over here and I refresh it, you can see the style's kind of altered there. Like the font changed, the padding and margin on the side went away. So that's how you can kind of tell, okay, Bootstrap's now loaded. So I'm going to be honest, I haven't used Bootstrap seriously in many years. So I'm going to be, I know roughly what you got to do, but you might ask some questions, and my answer might just be, look, I'm going to look them up online right now and tell you. Let's say we wanted to make a row where we've got like a bunch of columns, and then every number is like in a cell along that row. So one thing we could do is maybe I could do like, I could make like a div with an ID of row. And I'm also going to give it a class of row. Then what I'm going to do is I need to append a bunch of divs with a class of col inside of that row. And then inside of those call divs, I've got to put like the number if that came back from the number list endpoint. So one way I might do that, first of all, let me get this div so I have it in JavaScript, got a reference to it. So I'm going to do something like const row is equal to document.get element by ID row. So now row is a reference to this thing. And then once I've got row, I could do something like I'm going to append all these divs I'm going to make inside of row. So just saving this now and coming up here, what I'm going to get is row, and I've got all these divs inside of it. At that point, I've got to add that class of call to each of those, I believe. We'll see if in a second if I know my Bootstrap as well as I maybe am trying to make it seem like I do. So we could do something like that. Yeah, there we go. Wow, that's quite a relief that I kind of got that right. So now we've got a bunch of rows and calls here. And they're kind of ranged horizontally. And then maybe like I want to say something like, I also want to give a class to each of these columns called like number. So I'm going to give it a second one here. And I didn't mention this, but if you want to specify two classes with class name, you just do it exactly like you would in this class property. Just class space class, and that's what you get here, two classes. So then maybe I could add some CSS up top, and I'm just going to do that in a style tag in line. But you could put it in a CSS file if you wanted. I'll do like number, color red. There we go. So, I mean, of course, one could go as crazy as they wanted with this and make it look however abstract or fancy they'd like. But I think that's kind of showing like using Bootstrap, applying some styles, kind of starting to get back to some of the earlier module stuff. Does that make sense? I don't know who asked that, but.
Oh, Brian, quick note. In the code you just wrote, can you go back over and leave a comment about like putting class names in the same line?
Yes.
Because like if I saw that later, I would forget what that was.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
Carolyn, I think what you said is correct. I think because I just skimmed over it, but yeah.
So it's a time saver, it's a space saver. It's not reaching out in the directory for another file. It's all right there, but it's in its own little world inside.
Yeah, the reason
But
why
separate.
the reason why I did it this way is because I knew I was going to have to put this in the student pasted code channel. I didn't want to like put like multiple files and make you have to like
Yeah.
download them and put them in the right place and all that.
Should we do it this way though? Or do you want us to stay cautious and have our training wheels on still and have a separate file? Because this is pretty cool.
Oh, have you not talked about putting JavaScript in HTML like
You
that?
know, we may have, but it's all kind of still
Okay.
whoosha, this old brain of mine.
Yeah, well, let me quickly mention that then. So you might have only talked about using script tags with SRC, but another option you can do is you can create a script tag and just put JavaScript inside of them, and it'll run that JavaScript as if it's in another file that it's running. I did it here just so they could all be in one file. And the same thing with the style tag up here. So a way to include CSS just inline in an HTML file.
Yeah, so that is in line. And so the Axios JScript part, technically that's in line as well.
This you're talking about this line? Or
But would the information that would have normally gone in its own file that's right below that link.
yeah.
That
yeah,
in line technically?
yes,
Because
this
it's
is
kind of like separate. Do you know what I mean?
it is a little weird because you're embedding JavaScript in the middle of HTML. Like when you
So
start
it's
the
like-
script tag, it's like saying, okay, now this file's JavaScript temporarily. And then like you
So-
get to the bottom and you close it. And it's like, it's not anymore. Okay.
So it's like an inline embedded or an embedded inline.
Yeah, it's like you're embedding this JavaScript into the file rather than including it in a separate in a
Right.
separate file.
Would that be considered inline
This
technically?
would, yeah, I'd say this is considered.
It's still, okay,
Yeah.
I got it. I got
Sorry,
it.
maybe I was not defining my vocabulary.
No, no, you're great. I'm trying to parse and stringify for you. Okay, thank you.
So Kyle,
Oh, just one more quick question
Yep.
too. This is all going by. The code that is embedded is JavaScript, not JSON.
Mhm.
And it's not Axios, but we're using Axios to manipulate it. Like,
Yes.
is the syntax just like JavaScript syntax? This is where I'm getting confused. Or is it Axios syntax, or is it? Or we put Axios because it's going to call a server.
Axios is a JavaScript library. So what
Yes.
that means is you use it in JavaScript with the JavaScript syntax. It's as if it's the same sort of thing as if you defined a function called Axios, and you're using that function you defined. It's just instead of you defining that function, someone else is defining that function. So there's no sort of really like specific Axios syntax or anything like that.
Okay.
What is specific to Axios is the Axios function takes some specific parameters. And like I guess you could call that like syntax, but generally that's just like the parameters you need to pass in the library. So anytime you are in a JavaScript file or you're in one of these inline script tags, you're writing JavaScript, you're using JavaScript syntax, and you might be interacting with other libraries, but it is still JavaScript.
Okay. And this has API stuff in it then?
Yes, this is interacting with an API I wrote with Axios, and Axios is included right here.
Yeah, so that's what's happening. And Axios comes after just the straightforward bootstrap stuff. And then but you don't need to add just a regular JScript because Axios is taking care of it. So it would be silly. Okay, I think the pieces are sort of falling off the dining room table and I'm picking them up and gluing them together a little by little, but some of them aren't where they belong yet, but it will be.
We'll get there.
Thank you.
Kyle, what's your question?
Yeah, I'm having trouble with the part where you have to limit to the people who live on Tatooine. So the only thing that you can search for, the only search field that's available is name. And then when you try to put homeworld as the key instead of search, and you put the value of the URL for the planet, it still returns all 82 results. It doesn't narrow it down at all.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of stuck there, and I keep trying to like tweak it a little bit, putting things in quotes and not in quotes and stuff like that. But I've just really been stuck on that for like, I don't know, quite a while yesterday.
So have you, were you using the people endpoint?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I got all the people, 82 people, when I just put it as a regular GET request, like without any parameters or anything like that.
So here's the secret, this homeworld.
Yes. I've been using that. And then I put that in the key for under the parameters. And then I put the URL for the planet 1 in the value.
Let's
I've got it in Postman. I first was trying it in Axios and it wasn't working. So I thought maybe it'd be a little bit clearer. And I don't know. Been trying it in both places, trying to see, because Postman gives you some clues sometimes. Do you want me to share my screen or?
well, okay, yeah, sure, you can share your screen. Yeah, you've already got
it. You want to do it?
I was just gonna end up replicating what you probably already have anyway.
Okay. I gotta go back to Zoom to share my screen. Okay. So I don't know, I have quotes in here right now. They probably aren't supposed to be there, but I just was trying to make it work. And
Yeah,
I know I've seen that in Google searches and stuff like that.
try getting rid of the quotes
Right.
and hit send. Let's see.
Yeah, 82 people. And I've gone through them and it shows people that are on other planets, like planet 8 and.
Okay. One other thing to try getting rid of the swapi.dev parts. It's just /API/planets/1.
Oh,
Just a guess.
This is what messed me up on the other one. I think I may have tried portions of the URL, but maybe I didn't try that exact portion. Okay.
Try
No?
getting rid of swapi.dev. It's just /API/planets/1.
It won't let me click the beginning part of it there. No,
Try
I
it
think I tried that one.
Try /API/planets/1.
No.
Okay. One more thing. Try going back to what you had before. Make it HTTPS, not HTTP.
Hold on, I don't remember the whole URL. I have to go.
Hit a Command Z. It should get you back to where you were.
Okay.
Undo. Or select the.
Now it's wait a minute. It's down here somewhere. That's how I can do it.
Oh, okay.
If I can, vehicles. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
This is going to take too much, but I can always delete some of it.
So I will let you know that this sort of stuff, like APIs that are designed this way, are such a pain to use. Like that make you put URLs in the attributes. Wait,
Oh,
no,
we're supposed to put S, right? You told me
Yeah,
to put S here.
try
yeah.
putting S there. Huh.
No.
Very interesting.
Has anybody else actually gotten this successfully?
Try just putting 1 there. Maybe the documentation.
I think I tried that already, like without any slashes.
Yep, just 1. Like
Oh,
a
maybe
single
I have a
character.
slash. All right. I think I tried this, but no.
Huh.
I was doing this for like, I don't know, 45 minutes yesterday, maybe trying everything I could think of.
You see, I tested this out before the class, and I definitely had found a solution at the time. So I'm trying to remember what it was that I had discovered or done. And I didn't like have a ton of difficulty with it. Like on the first or second try, I got it. So
I was getting so frustrated. I was like, I could probably do this with a loop faster. Like,
I mean, it's funny you mentioned that because that's about like you could do that.
okay.
That's probably not what I said in the exercise.
No, I knew you wanted us to use the
Yeah.
query parameters. Yeah.
I'm getting splinters from scratching my head so much. You're not alone. I haven't even gotten to that assignment yet because I've been stuck on this other part of one that hopefully now I'm unstuck.
Oh,
This stuff is like really thinking, and I haven't had to quite think this way in a while.
here's
It hurts.
what
And I have the headers in there too, except JSON. I don't know if that, I mean, I tried it with and without those.
did I specify the endpoint you're supposed to use in the exercise? I forget.
People. Well, you told us to get all the people first, and I'd successfully done that as 82. So I figured we were supposed to keep the same URL. So I started with the people endpoint.
Yeah, okay. So you're doing the right thing.
Mhm.
I just don't really think that endpoint works right. Like the documentation seems to not match how it like you're doing what you should be doing here, and it doesn't really seem to be working, which I don't really understand why. What I
We
will
try
say,
it for a different thing, like get all the vehicles on Tatooine or something.
you're okay. That's kind of what I was going to mention. Like there's something you'll find with HTTP APIs in particular is they often provide a lot of different views into the data, all with like kind of different perspectives. So right now you're trying to filter a list of people by homeworld.
Right.
Another possible option is you could try to get the homeworld and see if it includes a list of people.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was one of the first example ones that I did just to test it. Like they had it as the first, try this first getting started example on the website.
Grab one thing and then you can open that up and see what's in it instead of trying to figure out where everybody is.
And in general, different approaches work better for different problems, just why they typically provide so many different ways you can
This is the
approach these things.
first thing they had you do. So then maybe, oh, I can get the residents there. That's not how you wanted us to do it, though.
It's not how I wanted you to do it, but it looks like that has the right information.
Right.
yeah.
I was trying to figure out how to use a filter, so that I thought that was the point of the assignment.
Yeah, it is the point of the assignment, and the fact that's not working is a problem. I'm gonna have to look at it after this and figure it out. But I just wanted to give you if this was the real world,
Right.
The question was you need to answer what people live on Tatooine, or what people are the home world is Tatooine. I guess residents and home world maybe isn't exactly the same thing. But like this is another way you could approach that problem. If like that endpoint was busted, you might have to use a different endpoint and like get the information in maybe a less ideal way and work around it to get the data you want.
Right. Well, if I was actually just trying to answer that question, like when I did this as my first test, you know, the example code on the website, I probably would have seen that those were there and gone about it this way, like somehow going down through that data, like, you know, dot residence, et cetera. But I don't know. I kind of saw the question as how do you use filters? You know, in
did everything right. This is the problem with the API / my exercise. I need to look at it. I'm just giving you another
I'd like
example.
to try to successfully do that at some point, even if it's not with the people on the planets, though, to practice using a filter. So I don't know, maybe I could just try filtering something else.
Try filtering by name. I think I saw that one was implemented a little bit differently and might actually work.
Well, that's when you can just search by. So like, I don't know if I should do this on the planets one, but that definitely worked on the people. Like,
yeah, I think I might just change that exercise to filter by name.
And then, I don't know. So I don't know if you had to put the whole name. I think their example was R2D2.
Typically the way searches work is they're like partial matches. So if you just put like the prefix.
Okay, so what if I put like Luke or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that works.
Okay. We'll change the exercise to be that. That's seems like it works.
Yeah,
Sorry for all the grief.
that's okay.
I swear I tested this, or I tested some version of this.
Extra credit for all the extra time, Kyle.
Maybe.
Just putting it out there, Ryan.
It does say under all the list of attributes, it says search fields name.
Yeah, that
So that was my first clue how to do this, but then that did not work. So I started putting the attributes in there.
yeah. I'm pretty sure I tested this out. Like, it would be like me to see the attribute and be like, oh yeah, that'll probably work. But like after the later on in the class, I learned my lesson of being like, I shouldn't just assume this stuff is gonna work. I need to go through it before you all do.
You
So
gotta
I'm pretty
remember
sure I
we're
did.
newbies. We don't have a clue half of us some of the time, at least I know.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
I had another question, but I think you accidentally answered it in some of the other stuff that you showed with what to do in our weekend project HTML page. I was trying to get, like after I got back the whole list of books, I was trying to get that to show up in that objectplayground.com just to like get a map of it because I thought that would be helpful and it wasn't working, but I think I need to use that stringify first to get it into JavaScript because it keeps telling me unspecified token. So it doesn't like, it's in JSON right now and it doesn't like it. Is that what the problem is?
Yeah, it very well could be. I mean, without seeing your code, it's going to be hard to say for sure. I would say that one thing to keep in mind is Axios will often parse the body for you. So if you're the body, the response when it comes back, it might have JSON in it. And if the server sets the content type right, which at least all the servers you've interacted with so far seem to, then Axios will take that JSON and they'll say, oh wait, it says that I'm should be receiving JSON, so I'm just going to take this and parse it as JSON for you. And that's kind of nice because then you don't have to include every single time that JSON.parse, but it might be, depending on what you're doing, sometimes it's not exactly what you want.
My question is, are you available 24/7 for the next few days? I'm kidding. I know you'll be there if we have questions.
Yeah, I'll be
And
around.
and you're getting obviously the comments that people put when they submit their assignment because you're commenting back. So that seems to be a good way for us to talk about the assignment that works for you.
Yeah, I mean,
Because another instructor, something wasn't working in Google Classroom, what else is new, and he didn't know that he was supposed to be getting those, and it was like, okay, it just made it he was frustrated because he was not getting them, and so I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that works for you, and of course there's Slack too.
I'm
So.
pretty sure you're talking about Max, and we've had extensive discussion.
No, actually I'm not, but I don't want to
Okay.
name names. No.
Okay, never mind that.
It just was, it was like something wasn't working and he felt bad because he thought it was him, and it's just, so I just want to make sure that that works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Well, Max is a guru. He really can do nothing wrong.
Max and I have had some long discussions about Google Classroom and its failures. We're
yeah.
probably not going to use it for the next.
That's what has been established, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think it's so bad, but I'm not dealing with the back end. So maybe that would be a capstone project for somebody down the road to fix it.
I will say that the one thing to keep in mind is I'm sometimes not super fast with grading things. I'm trying to get better, and like I think I was able to catch up yesterday with everything that's been submitted, I think.
Yeah.
So like if you want an answer soon and you don't want to wait a few days, Google Classroom is probably not the best way.
Yeah, no,
But
you're great.
otherwise, I'll see it eventually.
Yeah, a couple of those ones I submitted, I had just finished. And then there was one that I had resubmitted stuff because I didn't really change it, but there were a few things that were better. So like I resubmitted the same stuff again, but with a different file structure. So no, you're great. No, that's not a problem. I just want to make sure what works for you. And of course, 24/7 is a joke. You have a life, but and gonna miss you. Do you come back?
I am going to be back in August TAing for an old coworker of mine who's doing some stuff, but this is the only module I'm actually teaching.
Okay, cool. So we will see you again.
And I'll be around at the end for all the like capstone stuff too. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Way cool. I mean, it went by so fast.
yeah.
And Kelly, you're gone too, or we still get to have you?
So I'm out for a few weeks. You'll be back to Karen and Caitlin, and then I come back at the end of June to
Okay.
do a module with Gus.
They're awesome too, but I'm like, it's just, I don't know, the chemistry was really good here. So.
Thanks.
And
This is one of my
and
favorite.
again, I'm
modules
not
when I went
commenting on
through it, so I wanted to
anybody,
do
but it just was
It a
really
lot of fun.
good. What's that?
This was one of my favorite modules when I took this class, so I was happy to come back and get to experience it as a TA.
It's great.
So,
But you know how you're compiling the information, which other TAs do too, but I mean, you take like a whole 3.5 hour lecture. And it's like, this is what he hit, boom, boom, boom. And you're like, oh, was that what that was? Is that what we talked about? Oh yeah. And then you watch the video and it's like, so it's extremely helpful. I really appreciate this. Is really great. I just hope I can get through this thing. Ay. Boot camp. That's what they call it.
Did you see Ryan's question? Or I'm sorry, did you see Susan's question, Ryan?
I was just going to ask about that.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out where it was posted. Which channel did you put it in? Oh, in DMs.
Just regarding the path, because I tried that and it didn't work, but it looked like it was right, according to what I thought I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, if you make a get the student ID assignments, assignment ID, that'll get an assignment that's associated with the student. Which
I was supposed to have created. And I think my issue is I started in Axios and then I switched to Postman. I don't know. I wasn't. If I'm trying to see the assignment that I potentially created, I would have to use a get to just see it.
Yep.
Okay. So probably I should do that first to see if it's really there.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it is there, I would go back and put it in that syntax that I sent you.
Yeah, you would get
to update it, I mean.
Yes, I think you're saying the right thing.
Yeah. Okay. So but it looks right. It's just I need to make sure that I have the right ID.
Yep.
Basically. Okay.
Also, I think Max called it out in the channel, but that :ID syntax, I don't know if I covered that as deeply as I should have. I think I mentioned it briefly, but it was that's a syntax that's used typically with REST APIs to kind of indicate the format of a path. Typically, the way it works is where you see like : something, that's where you put in the ID of a type of object. So in the example of like /student ID, like that endpoint, if you wanted to make a request to it for a specific student, it would be like /student/1 or something like that.
Right, I understood that because I made it work with the other part of that question.
Coding it out a little, would you mind just like showing? It doesn't have to be the assignment, but like an example just to see.
Yeah. So for example, like actually I'll do this in Chrome. So for example here, like the Star Wars API. You can see here, like they have an endpoint /species/:ID. And they show this example here of what it looks like with species that ID. So what I would do is if I have like something like this means I need to put there's only one thing being talked about here. So it's just species is like, or the only sort of ID. So they just said ID, but that means I have to put a species ID here when I make a request. So if I went like axios.get species 3, can see it's giving me back the species information for, it looks like a Wookiee. But something like this would not work. Like, that doesn't exist. You have to put something in that location.
So you wouldn't include ID and like a colon and what it is. That spot at the end of the path is where the ID is supposed to go. So you just put
Exactly.
what it is.
Yep.
Okay. The other thing too, when showing, objects and arrays and so forth, and assigning keys and value pairs and all that. And some of them outside of all the braces, and it's within a brace too. It's got all this stuff, including an ID, like ID, the menu one. Do you remember that?
Mhm.
I get kind of lost in some of that stuff that's to the left and what it is and why it is, and if we need to use it for any of the things we're doing. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Okay.
I think I know what you mean.
It's hard to express, but
Yeah, so what you're talking about is like if you have, for example, something like this, where you've got a key map to a value and then a key map to a value, and maybe like in here you've now got like another object where I don't know, A is mapped to B. These don't really need quotes because we're not in JSON. But you've got like this and you've got this. Maybe like you're talking about when you have it's sort of nested and you've got like the JSON gets relatively deep. You kind of get lost in all the levels of objects.
yeah, but more so for me, what precedes all of that, and that might be in JSON, where they had it'll have like a curly brace, ID colon, and then start that whole thing, or like the one that had ID dot menu or something, colon, and it start that whole, the stuff that like
Yeah.
preceded. I forget what that was, but
It was in here.
yeah, I'm like, do we need that? And I kind of get what it is, but I don't understand.
So the
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
yeah. So the thing you're saying, like, you look at this and you don't really know what this means just by looking at it. Like, you're not able to parse through all these sorts of like all these symbols easily. Is that what you're saying?
The value new action did it all the way through to close doc, and we added a delete doc in one of our exercises. I get that.
Mhm.
Anything from where value new action create new, that array right outside it, you've got the colon and you go backwards from there, that whole thing. So from single quote curly brace and then the menu colon curly brace ID and call file value if I did pop up, that part I don't totally understand. And do we need to use that in some of these exercises or something like?
I don't think I understand what you're asking. Can you? I understand the part, but not the question.
Okay, take single quote curly brace, double quote menu, double quote colon, and keep going, keep going, keep going. And then after pop up, double quote colon, stop on the colon.
Mhm.
That section there.
Yes. What about it?
What about it? What the hell is it?
What does it do? Okay.
So what, yeah, and how would we, like, if we're gonna do something, it wouldn't necessarily be menu or pop-up, it would be something else probably.
These sorts of strings in here, or these sorts of like identifiers, there's nothing that's like in JSON that says this is like you have to start your object with like a key of menu or anything like that. Those are purely user-defined values. So whoever wrote this JSON, me, I decided that in my JSON, I wanted to start like at the highest level to contain an object. So that and that. Inside of that, then I wanted to put a key of menu, and I wanted that to map to this whole thing. So you see what I selected here, how this whole section here,
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
the value after the colon. So it goes colon, and then it's this whole
Right,
area.
I-
And then the
and
curly brace here goes with
Yeah.
the curly brace up
and
here.
that's just right. And I understand that, but then you get the ID colon file, value file, pop-up. What's
So
that?
inside this object we've got here that I've selected, this is an object,
The
kind
whole
of
thing.
the whole thing. And it is the value of what we've mapped menu to here.
Right, okay.
So imagine kind of now I took this and I'm just going to extract this out separately.
Let's make up like a new example of,
Say that again.
like a different example of the same thing.
I guess
It
I'm
doesn't
not
matter.
sure what you're asking yet, so I don't know how to do that.
Okay, because, all right, so you've pulled the ID to pop-up. It's just from ID to pop-up. I'm trying to understand how that fits into the whole thing.
So I've extracted the section I've selected. Now
Yes.
this section, I've now, this on its own is JSON. Like it has the same sort of attributes as the rest of it. Like I've got it starts with this key ID and it has a value file, value, or I think I said the wrong words there, but like it has keys and values. It's an object.
Right, ID's a key, files a value, etc.
Yep. Now the important thing to realize is this here, this value of menu is in itself another object. There are two levels of objects going on there. There's
Yes,
not a ID is not something available at the top level of this outer object that has menu in it. ID is within its own object that is the value of menu.
yeah, because you'll have other ones probably. Okay,
So because of that, you can, if you want to think of it, the way you can think of it when you parse it out is every single time you come across an object, you can think of that as its own sort of JSON snippet, and you can parse through that and read it. And then when you come across like maybe like an array, you can say, okay, I'm going to take this part out, and now this part is going to
Yep.
become its
And
own.
I did do that, trying to understand this, yes.
And eventually, that's really kind of the technique people often use in their head to simplify JSON. They kind of only
Yes.
look at part of the document, and
Right.
only work within that piece, and kind of forget about the rest of it until they have to think about it from like the 10,000 foot view again.
Yeah, so for one of our exercises anyway, we need to, it has instructor you, module 5, student Carolyn, you have to map something to something. We're basically kind of following that same pattern that starts this out, but with different data.
Sorry, say that one more time.
We, you see, now you know how I feel.
I'm having a hard time understand what you're asking.
Well, one of the exercises, we're supposed to create an object, map and all that and one of the arrays only has one value, which is you, Carolyn. And then there's an instructor, and then there's the module number, and we're supposed to map that to something and so forth. Trying to think, okay, get rid of menu. All right, we don't need that. We call it something else probably. And then my ID. I mean, I don't have to follow that business from menu ID up until where you start with the new action and new file can have different stuff in it, but you're kind of following a similar pattern, right? And we would need to do that to do this thing.
This object here is its
Yeah.
own object and does not have any sort of bearing on the outer object. The only sort of relation they have with this inner object is the value of
That,
an item in that outer object.
yes.
So another thing
So-
that might help is if I,
When we create an object for that exercise, we need an outer object, probably. I don't know, you can't answer that.
I don't have the exercise in front of me. If you can send me.
But I mean, you also would probably be giving away the assignment, so not trying to get freebies here. All right,
I guess something else I find really helpful when I'm trying to parse through a JSON object
it's breaking down, yep,
is using the Chrome's like way they represent it, where like you can then kind of drill into a specific part of it. So like
yep,
I can see that it starts here with menu. And when I go inside of it, like there's a menu key and it's equal to this thing. And then I
Yep.
can go inside of the menu key and can see this is what it looks like. It's got these things. I can go inside of pop-up, and like we're getting like pretty deep into this thing now.
Yep, I
and-
love doing that.
Yeah, this is I don't think anyone just looks at this and immediately understands the structure of the whole thing. Like that's you should feel like that's the goal here.
Yeah, I'm getting it. I just wasn't sure about that other part to the left, that's all. Okay, I think yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to make it too complicated, but I want to make sure I'm actually doing, the right process. So if it's too simple, it might not be right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And of course, if it is, you'll tell me and I'll work on it some more and resubmit it. But all right, well, thank you. I think that's some of the cobwebs just fell off the ceiling. So I think we're getting there.
Good. Karen,
Thank
you've had your
you.
hand raised now for a while. I want to give you a chance to ask some questions.
Hi, Ryan.
Hi.
I just basically wanted to find out and clarify. You were basically saying that with your HTML file, instead of creating a .js file, you can just add the JavaScript right in there
You can.
between script tags.
Yeah, that's what I did here. So like I made a script tag and a closing script tag, and then in here I can put JavaScript if I want. Keep in mind that when you do it this way is really great for like small examples and for like little tests here and there. Where it's not all that great for is when you start to get larger applications that are complicated. Like
Okay.
the reason why I did it here is because this is a pretty small amount of JavaScript.
Just
It's
a
something
snippet.
that I wanted to send to you all so you could try it out. And
Okay.
this is really good when you want to you want to have like a small example you can send someone where it maybe isn't as good as if you have like a, I don't know, like you're trying to build like maybe like your capstone project. This probably would
Right.
not be a great thing to do there because you now have all your JavaScript in one big thing and you can't really start to separate it between files, organize it. It just becomes a lot harder to reason about.
Oh, okay. All righty. Okay. And the last thing was thank you for a module that was a little bit more clear. Okay. All right. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I second, third, and fourth, and fifth that motion. And Kelly already went, so I can't say it again, but thank you so much. I mean, this stuff isn't that clear because you have to think about it and then it becomes clear. But you're great at giving us the pieces and then we figure it out and you give us the feedback. So thank you very much.
Well,
Really
good to hear.
appreciate it. And there will be more assignments coming from me. It's just got to work on them still.
Yeah,
It takes a while. I mean,
this stuff is not straightforward the first time you learn it. Like it takes, you have to let it churn in your head a little bit. But
it's like inductive learning, and that can be the hardest way to learn. But unless you're the kind of person that can't learn inductively, whatever your learning style is, it sticks with you longer. And
Yeah.
it's like you go, oh, like that one little teeny thing in my code, and you didn't tell me what it was, but you sort of gave me a sense. And I looked at the code again. How long had I been looking? I was like, duh.
Yeah,
And I fixed it.
just to
So-
provide clarification, like the reason why, like that's actually how you learn in software. Like
Anything really.
you can talk to any one of the instructors and they'll tell you that the only way to get better at this stuff is just to write more code, to spend
do it.
more hours in front of a computer looking at it, bang your head against the screen over and over and over.
Well, don't do that to your
Hours and hours
MacBook
on it.
because I get paid for it. But yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, it's what is it? You spend 15 minutes puzzling, 15 minutes, pulling your hair, and then you reach out and ask the question. But I spend more than 15 because I really want to figure it out.
Yeah. And
So,
I'll say
fun.
that the more screen time and the more time you're willing to spend kind of just like floundering, like it is when I think of it, I think of like a fish kind of like just flopping around in a boat, like trying to find its way back in the
Oh,
water. And
that's a
like
good analogy.
eventually the fish will figure it out, but it's going to be a process that takes some time, it takes some effort. And like I can try to give more clues, and I have been, but at the
Well, you
same
could tell
time,
us every little detail, but
yeah, like you're not,
it's not gonna, yeah,
if you're working on
exactly.
a project and you're like, I want to fetch all this data from the New York Times, I want to show it on a web page. Like, you're not going to think of, oh, I'm going to make a request with Axios to the New York Times API and then call then on the promise I get back from Axios. And then, like, you're not going to think of it at that.
I woke up thinking that this morning, actually.
Well, no, but you're going to have to break it down to that granularity, like in your head, but that's got to be something you're going to have to do. That's not something that's
Right, it's, you got to make it your own.
project.
Yeah,
And that
definitely.
sort of skill of like taking a big problem and breaking it down into smaller pieces,
Chunking
that's basically engineering. Like
or
that is
task analysis.
at the highest
Yep.
level. And that's a skill that takes a while to learn. But once you once you grow at it and you become better at it, it makes everything easier.
You know, life is like that.
Yeah, I mean, it
You
just
can't do it all. You can only do little bits that you can do, and you keep telling, like The Little Engine That Could. I don't know if you ever read that book as a kid. It's my favorite. It's like you have to tell you, and the stuff I've been through, you know, I'm here today alive because I knew I could do it. So it's, yeah, but I really appreciate you're wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I also don't have a Calendly link set up just because I typically, my schedule is usually pretty tight. I don't have just like I don't have like spans of time that I can necessarily devote to any sort of one-on-ones, but if anyone does want to do a one-on-one in the future, I am available. Just send me a message in Slack and we can find a time. I know that's probably not what I'm supposed to do, but things are complicated and I haven't gotten a chance to figure out Calendly yet. So that's probably the best I've got at the moment.
I can't speak for the powers that be, but I don't see why that's an issue as long as, you know, people can still reach out to you in some way, respecting the fact you have a job and a life.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's cool with me. Unless you do telepathy, and we could try that.
Yeah, anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, just a quick one about like the security of the tokens. Because when I was first thinking about how to do this, and this is down the line, I had, you know, but in the actual website that we're creating, I was thinking that anybody, like if we were to put that online, which we're not doing, so that this probably doesn't matter for this assignment, but if we were to put that online, anyone could do it, inspect and see the token. And I was concerned about that, and I couldn't figure out how to do that without like maybe making a window pop up where somebody had to enter their own token. But obviously you haven't done that in your example. And I looked in your example and you've got an API key in there. So I'm just wondering, like in the real world, how would you keep that secure?
Yeah, I'm really glad you're bringing this up. So you're going to talk probably more about this in the security module, but in general, security is all relative. Saying something is secure is never really the right way to say it. Really, the way that you should think about security is there's sort of a level of threat you want to protect against, and your solution, whatever you're doing, your mitigations have to be just at least at a minimum above that threshold. And for me, I did the thinking here. I thought, okay, this API key, this is one that's associated with an account I've only used like for both these careers in code cohorts I've taught. There's no sort of like personal information associated with it. No one can like get into anything I've got. If someone gets access to this API key, there's not really many sort of consequences they can have. Maybe they can they could like hit the API over and over and cause like a rate limiting thing and take my site down, but like not really that big of a deal. This is only used for careers in code, and you folks would notice, and I just update the API key.
And it's not connected with Hack Upstate Careers and Code, and it's like not on one of their servers.
No. I mean, this is
a separate. I mean, so it's like it's just kind of there, unless they can get to something else through that. There really isn't an issue with that.
Yeah.
So that's a great question she's asking though about. I'm glad she did. Thanks, Kyle.
I'm kind of thinking ahead a little bit to my capstone, because I'm going to be probably using a Google Maps API or some kind of. I was thinking if I use Google Maps, I'll probably end up doing it like under my own Google account, which is a little more dangerous. So.
Yeah. Well, so in this case, it was fine for me to put it in the HTML. In the case, like what you're actually talking about, though, is a problem that a lot of web applications encounter. They've got calls they want to make, they have API requests they want to make, but they don't want the client to be able to have the token to authorize them. So the way you usually end up doing that is you give the server that token. And this is getting a bit ahead, but I think you can kind of at least think through this conceptually. You give the server that token, and the server makes that request on your behalf. And then you then connect to the server with a token that is more public or something that is less risky or something the server can like revoke and reissue to you. So that sort of token that's like the keys of the kingdom, that's something that's locked away on the server that no client has access to.
That's good to know. Cool.
So, but also like you mentioned something where like you might want to, the way you thought to solve this is like have a prompt where you ask the user for their token. And we have a name for that, and it's called logging in. Like that's what logging in basically is. Like it's just instead of you asking the user to put in a token, they put a username and password in. The client makes a request to the server returns a token, and the server stores that, or the client stores that token in memory.
And the password is your
Okay, so
token.
that's what happens behind the scenes when you're logging into something. There's a token involved. Cool.
Exactly, or one way that it could happen. So Latonia asked me a question. When we revoke a key, does it remain active for active case uses and only not be valid for future uses, or is it rendered invalid on any ongoing or future uses? Great question. Typically, when you revoke a token, if you've taken a token and put it into a web application, when you revoke that token no longer works for requests going forward made by anything. So that could mean an application you've made, the token's hard-coded in it, like my New York Times bestseller example, or that could mean like a new application. Of course, because the requests you've made in the past with that token have already happened, you can't like undo those requests. So those will have those in the past completed and you're fine. But yeah, anytime you specify that token going forward, it won't work. That's typically what revoking a token means.
This is kind of a silly thing too, but how many requests would you have to make to like overload it in the process of making this so that you can't make any more requests and I can't finish working on my project? I was a little worried about that at one point.
It's enough requests where as an individual person, you probably wouldn't trip it unless you tried to trip it. So the way you could cause that is if you put a request to the New York Times API inside of an infinite loop or something, and you just made them over and over and over. Like we're talking about like thousands of requests an hour.
Okay, so it's nothing I really should be like conservative about how many times I'm trying something while I'm doing this project or anything like that.
No, but I would say like in the real world, yeah, I mean, in the real world, this can totally be a problem, especially if you're given an API that's like poorly formatted to do what you want. Like, let's say maybe you have an API, you have a resource that has like a list endpoint, and you get that list data, and inside of there, you only have like half the fields, but all the rest of the fields are available as if you do like /get/ the ID of it. So you have to now, if you want those fields, you now have to get the list of all of them and then make a request to each of those particular items you got back in like a loop and get all that data. Like if you have to do something like that, that's where like a rate limit maybe starts to become more of a concern. Also, typically with rate limits, like the worst outcome is they'll just block off your API access for a little bit and then eventually you'll get it back again. So it's usually not like a permanent thing. So even if you did hit it, like the consequences, you have to wait an hour and then come back to it.
Oh, just an hour. Okay. I thought you said something at one point, like at the end of the month, and I was like, then I couldn't finish my project. Although
yeah, I mean,
the end of the month is like Tuesday, so I could probably finish it this week, but.
What server are you on? Is it one you set up, or Kyle? What server are you on?
I'm not on any. What server do you
Oh, I thought, okay.
I'm just talking about how many times I'm making the API request for the
of the
like
module
every time you
5?
reload the page, basically, once you're coding this, right? I mean, it's going to go to the API and get all the information again.
Oh, for the final project?
For the final project, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ryan can always find a way around it, I'm sure.
I mean, the other thing you could always do is you can make a new account and a new token and all that. That would be completely associated, like different from what you currently have.
Okay, so the tokens are in no way associated with the IP address for our computer or anything like that.
It's a good point. I hadn't considered that. I mean, they could be, but or okay, let me rephrase that. What I mean by that is sometimes rate limiting happens based on an IP address and not by a token. So if from your computer you make like a ton of requests, you could get a new token and the server would just be like, no, this IP is blacklisted for like a while. So in theory, yes. In practice, though, it's usually done by token. Any other questions from anybody?
Will the sun come out tomorrow?
I really hope so. It'd be bad if it didn't.
Annie said so. You remember the Broadway musical, I presume? Yeah. Yeah, at least if it's not real super nice out, it's like you're not sacrificing as much by being inside working on this stuff, right?
Yeah, this is a good weekend for writing software. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again. And everybody, I wish you the best for the weekend and getting your work done and not stressing too much if we can all help it. We're here for each other, right? We really are. So I'm speed bumps and all, I'm here.
Joey's been trolling me this whole time in Slack. Okay.
Controlling you. Got the joystick.
Yeah, Joey should have stopped by. Could have all said hi to him.
He's already given us homework.
Yeah,
And it's like, I still got to get through this first, Joey. Slow down.
I'll tell you that like it's pretty aggressive, like teaching all of React in 3 weeks.
This whole, yeah.
But
Yeah.
if there's someone up for the challenge, it's Joey.
Are we though? Am I?
I mean, it's gonna be tough, but like you're gonna get through it. You're gonna get through it.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope I'm not a flunky. They kick me out because I'm not doing enough or something. Oh boy. Take care, everybody.
So yeah, I mean, unless anyone else has any other questions, but
Just with Star Wars, are you going to rewrite that, or should we just kind of go along with what you said?
for now, I'm gonna rewrite it later today. For now, just skip over it and work on the last one, but I'll make some corrections and I'll post about it in Slack.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Sorry about that again.
Yeah, it can't be perfect all the time, only most of the time, right?
If I can get over 50%, that's good.
Yeah, what is it? I like to say I'm perfect all the time, or I'm right all the time, except for the 99.9% of the time that I'm wrong. What does that leave you?
Yeah.
Well, chowder, everyone. See you Tuesday. I don't know what day it is. Thank you.
Ariel, do you want to stay on and catch up, or do you want to schedule some other time?
I can. I have time now. I'm just kind of super behind. So, I mean, that's up to you if you want me to wait and watch the videos first, or if you want to just, I'm back on Monday right now. So.
Okay. Do you think it'd be helpful to talk to me, or do you want to watch the videos first?
Honestly, if you would be willing to just kind of run over the summary, like I've seen the Slack of what each day was, but if there's a way to consolidate that into like a 5-minute, like, I don't know how you would, but.
I mean, we can go through some stuff at a high level. I still think it'd be worthwhile to watch the videos, but at least maybe I can give you the right directions to head for things.
Yeah, if there's anything that, particularly everybody got stuck on, or anything that, was more troublesome, I would appreciate that, please.
Okay. How about this? I'll send you another link and we can jump on that.